CSGO fast.
Hello everyone. So this topic is about regarding the majors and how it works and stuff like that. So I'll try to give a little bit of my opinion on stuff that I think could be changed. But to start with, I think Valve does a great job with CSGO in general, and the tournaments are always awesome. But of course, I think the main idea here is trying to improve the system that already is in place here. First of all, I think the major structure the way it is right now, it's only 2 tournaments per year, and I think that's fine. I think the number is okay, but I think the way you qualify for the tournaments is not optimal. I think Valve should work around the other tournament organizers and help them over the entire year to make all other tournaments meaningful, which means other tournaments should give points to qualify teams for the major. Let's take for example NIP. NIP was able to win Oakland, which was a super and great and difficult tournament, but they were not able to qualify for the tournament because they lost a couple BO1s and stuff like that. If a team is able to win tournaments, they should be able to at least be considered one of the teams that should be on the majors, right? So I think it would be great to see a system in place that would look like the Dota system that is in place right now. I think it's not optimal. It's the first year that Dota has added the system, but every single tournament in the world where it's considered a minor or a major is important to qualify for the international. That's what we need in CSGO. We need all the tournaments with a little bit more of meaning, so teams can rely on the entire year and not only on one tournament.
I don't like the minors anymore. I thought that's a very cool idea to begin with, but I think at this point, once you get through the online portions of the qualifier and you kind of figure out teams that are going to be at the minor, I think the minors should all be held as one tournament with every single region together in one place at one event, and you figure out who the best teams are from these collective regions. I don't think you should have 2 spots dedicated to region A and 2 spots dedicated to region B. I think if we just get all the 24 teams from the 4 different minors or whatever it might be, 32 teams, whatever it is, and just have them compete for whatever 8, 16 total slots together in the major, then all of a sudden it doesn't matter what region you're from, you're just getting the top 8 teams from that minor system. Still accomplishes the same goal without giving regions spots for no reason.
People always argue about CIS, why aren't they not with Europe? Well, we see at this major CIS teams are doing great, so I think if a team is truly good, no matter the competition, they will come out on top. So that comes if we're talking about competition, right? If you want to promote regions, then it's a different type of a story. But I think those are some of the main issues that probably need to be addressed if we really want to keep the majors the most prestigious and the most important events.
A lot of the changes that a lot of people want require a lot more involvement from Valve than we usually see. Obviously, they just sort of outsource the major and the qualification part to different organizers, and then they get to run, that part of it. And I think the problem is, if you want to make really big changes, you'd need to change the rest of the schedule. There's not enough room in the Counter-Strike schedule to make like a really cool major run-up. I'd prefer it if we had sort of pre-planned seasons where even maybe some of the tournaments would you'd earn points and then you sort of build up to get invited to the regional, the minor qualifiers, and then building into the major and all that stuff. But the problem is, so much of the regular schedule is taken up by online Counter-Strike that people, as far as I can tell, don't really want to watch. So yeah, I think the problem is it's very hard to deal with. The only way it can happen now, I think, is if Valve step in and say, okay, we're going to take charge of it and recreate the major system the way that we think it's going to work best. I don't think that's going to happen. So I think we're going to be stuck with this for a while, and I'm not sure I can see a way out of it. I think we've landed in a very uncomfortable situation where we need online Counter-Strike to sort of make the ecosystem work, and at the same time it's also, I think, holding Counter-Strike back. So I don't know how to get out of that.
I would remove best of ones or make them so that maybe just the opening game is a best of one, because I believe that a lot of these teams now have deep map pools. I think best of ones can be too random at times, especially at the major where the pressure is even higher on these players. We've seen it time and time again. You lose both pistols, you get reset once, and the game is already over. And over a best of 3 series, you get into the groove of things. You know, for underdogs, it's more difficult that they can't just focus on 3 maps and go through. You know, in that way, we had Big in Poland, win Inferno 3 times, and clinch legend status, right? So I think it's also unfair to those teams who do make the upsets. They will constantly be second guessed in their results, and sometimes, you know, that's also fair because you've seen examples of teams who make legends by winning best of ones and then don't do anything after the major for the next couple of months. So I think the Swiss format has been fun, but I think we should go back to GSL and have best of 3s, and that way, even if you're an underdog, sure, you beat one team in a best of 3 and you can clinch that playoff spot. I think it's also unfair to underdogs in Swiss. They can beat you know, someone like SK, and then in the next phase they can get phase, and you know, you can't expect them to beat world's best teams like 2 or 3 times over the course of one tournament.
I mean, whether it's Swiss or the GSL type format, I think best of 1s have worked pretty well in the past for Counter-Strike, because the problem with best of 3s is if you have a lot of teams that are sort of, or let's say the major, the qualification stage is like half and half, so half really good teams and half not so good teams. You throw those into a best of 3, you're going to get a lot of 2-0s, and they're going to have the same results as a best of 1, so you're just wasting everyone's time playing best of 3s for no real reason. But since that's changing, it's obviously changing, I think that adds a lot of validity to the best of 3 format. It's a real shame just seeing some of these teams go out that probably could have had more of an impact in a best of 3 scenario. I realize the problem is it's going to take so much longer to do, but yeah, whether it's GSL or Swiss, I'm less interested in, more interested in the best of 3, especially as we get closer to the playoffs. I wish that would be a thing in the future.
I would say actually this one will probably be very unpopular, but one thing I would like actually brought back to the major is the randomizer for maps. I found at the time that it was going on, I was one of the guys who didn't really like it so much, but at the same time, I think now without it, it forces teams to have a deeper map pool, and it forces them to consider to a certain degree all the different maps. And I think if you bring that randomizer in, we get a lot of different maps being played. I think you see a lot more variety. I think that's a lot more exciting from a spectator point of view. And I think once it's in there, and we know it's in there, teams are going to prepare a little bit more, or at least a little bit on each map, so that they have a general understanding. We're not going to see Nuke constantly banned. And yes, it's the BO1s, but especially with the BO1s, we're seeing all the same maps. There's been so much Inferno, there's been so much Mirage. Let's get more maps involved into this game. Let's force teams to actually, you know, work on these maps and create new ideas and new strategies.
The fact that Valve changed the major to 24 teams is a good thing, in my opinion. It would be able to make the scene more global and see at the major, which is supposedly the biggest tournament with the most prestige, most fame that you can get for a player, it manages to put the scene even more global, so you can have teams from every single region. The only downside to it is I think the system that is currently in place needs to be a bit changed, in a sense that we need to take that qualifier a bit more serious, in the sense that I would say that it would be good to invite only 4 teams from the past major that made top 4. Have a circuit with all the tournament organizers that would make points in order to get some teams invited, in order to complete those 8 teams that we originally had that were invited to the group stage of the major. And then make global qualifiers where the actual 8 best teams, or it's going to be 16 more teams that are going to be to the major in order to qualify and go one step further. So making sure that actually all the best teams are there and not just teams that were here back in the days for the last major, because now they're spaced 6 months from one another. And so that's how I see the thing. So I'm really glad that we have 24 teams, that the scene is getting more global. You can see the teams like Space Warriors that before didn't really have that much chance to participate, like South American teams, Chinese teams. We didn't have those regions that much before, so yeah, I'm really looking forward to how it's going to evolve, and hopefully there's going to be a bit of input from Valve in order to develop that even more and make it even better for Counter-Strike.
Well, the legend system right now, I think it can be optimized a bit better. Obviously, I'm pretty biased with this opinion, but because I never reached legend spot, but I feel like there's too much advantage going placing top 8 of the tournament with handing invites basically to the next major, which is 6 months later. And as you can know, in CS:GO roster, you drop off from being really good team to being barely relevant. So like I feel like it's too much advantage handing these invites straight away. On the other hand, I think what could fix it is like having a reward in terms of prize money, bigger reward, and also what might be applied is the sticker money can be bought by users or fans for those teams only who are already, who are still in the tournament. So let's say someone makes it to the top 8, or let's say to the finals, their stickers can be bought throughout the whole tournament. So obviously they will get more money than the team that is dropped out in early stages of the major.
Another thing that I think is important is the way that teams can't change their lineups before events, and the time frame between the changes this year was awful. For example, Bolt, who actually was a Legends player for the last major, he went to the finals. He was dropped from the team that actually held the spot, which was the other 3 players from his team. And of course, as not only Boats, but all the players in the world want to compete in the major. So of course they will try to qualify and play their online stage and do everything they can to be there. And of course he went and played an online stage of the qualification process to try to get there, and he failed. But if you look for the time frame the legendary teams had to add new players, we had more time to add players while the tournament was already happening, which means we couldn't use boats even if we had time frame to add players, which means we are not able to really add the players we wanted, because of course every single player in the world tried to qualify for the major. So what's the point on giving the legendary teams this time frame if everyone is going to be trying to play for other teams? So actually we didn't have any single choice on getting a very good player. We had to keep Phelps, who of course he's extremely good, but if we wanted to go with someone else, or if Phelps didn't want to play with us, or if Phelps would be playing with someone else, then it wouldn't work. So I think this is a little bit disconnected and needs some improvement.
I also believe the roster lock issues need to be addressed, because let's face it, there's so many tier 1 tournaments around, big tournaments that teams are really willing to play for, that they are willing to make roster changes even after the window that we have now, to focus on those tournaments and not solely on the major. And I think we need to find a way to make some compromise so that we don't come into the major having a quarter of the teams, or maybe even more at some times, playing with not their rosters, you know, having stand-ins or having coaches. Then we have teams pulling out. I don't think that's something you want for the most prestigious tournament in Counter-Strike.
So coaching at the majors is still evolving, how the correct form is that people should be using. And when I started in my job, we were able to speak full-time and throughout all the rounds, and then it evolved to a point where they took some of that liberty away, where it was only through specific amounts of pauses. And I can see plus side to both, but what I like to think that if we were able to speak full-time, even I think that's overpowered, because we were able to mid-round call, and I think that takes away from, ultimately it's the 5 players in the servers that should be focusing in their game. But at the same time, if we're only allowed 4 30-second pauses where sometimes the timing isn't perfect and we can't help out as well, it kind of takes away from our preparation, because coaching's job is mostly in the preparation leading up to an event. During the event is 1 to 2% of what we can do, but during these high situations, it's nice to be able to have some kind of guidance to the players. It's not even about controlling the economy, because most pro players should be able to be doing this at the high level that we're playing when we're playing against the best. And when you compare it to any other sport, sometimes the coach is able to speak with the players depending on the sport, but if not, he's at least able to guide them and remind them of what has been practiced and what the preparation has been for these events. And I think that doesn't take away from the sport in any sense. It only elevates the level at which players can rise. Because like I said, at the end of the day, it's all 5 of them in the server, and anything you can do to aid them into getting a higher level, into showing a higher level of competition, getting coaches more involved with more charisma, as long as you'll be able to find more professionals to aid the top 16, top 24 teams that are able to bring more out of these teams, and you're going to be able to bring out talent from these regions, because sometimes these teams are inexperienced and they just need one person there to be able to kind of unleash them, or at least guide them in an easier path, be it through experience or be it through sometimes identifying one small flaw in the way we're playing or the way that they're playing that they can exploit. If you're not able to do the mid-round part of it, I think that already takes a lot of the power away from coaches, but while at the same time being able to influence the game in a positive aspect for both teams. If every team were to have a coach who was able to give them tips and guides, I only see the sport moving forward for coaches, and I think Valve should really take a hard look at that.
One last thing, maybe the timing of the majors. I think it's never going to be perfect with teams complaining, you know, now it's after the break. Krakow was just before the break and everyone was complaining about something, whether it's burnout or being rusty. So the way I would probably do it, maybe make it a month into the season after you have one tournament being played or two, so the teams get warmed up a little bit, but still have enough time to switch things up before the major.
I think majors should always end in a season. You always want the best team to hit their peak from during the season, and you want all teams to have the final tournament of the year or of the season to be in the end. So that means if you would have a major in summer, you should probably have it in July, meaning that after the major, everybody can break down teams, change lineups, and refresh for a new season. The hardest problem about going into a major like this in January is you don't have the match feeling. You have a lot of practice, routines, but if you haven't played a match, or official match, where the nerves are on for 2 months for some teams, it can be very hard to get into a groove. One thing is that I always think you have to end it with a big tournament. Just like when we played SK in the ESL Pro League, this was the final of the season, instead of us playing mouseboard in ECS. I think way more people enjoyed the game of saying who was the best team of 2017, and you get to see that in a best of 5 final in a Grand Slam. For me, that could be a major, at least, the feeling of it.
Other stuff, I think Valve needs to be a little bit more creative with their content in game. And if you look, for example, again, I like to make comparisons with Dota, because I think Dota is the team and the game is the game to go for. They are very active in the community, and they do a lot of stuff regarding the tournaments and the players itself. So stuff like compendiums and there are a lot of activities you could do, a lot of promotions regarding the teams and players into a major. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people would love to help increasing community, the prize pool in tournaments, would love to receive back some special skins where you'd memorize a tournament and stuff like that. So there's a lot of stuff that could be happening, and only Valve has the power to create it. So if they take some ideas from the Dota game, I'm sure they can create a lot of content. Nowadays, people don't care about the stickers anymore. I think this is very outdated. And if you look for the profit for the players as well, we are making 5, 6, 7 times less than what it did in the past. And that just shows how no one cares anymore about the stickers itself. There needs to be new content. So there's a lot of change that could be happening, but I think the majors, they are already a great tournament to be playing. I'm very honored to play the majors since the beginning, since I started, and it's great to be here. So besides all the points you say, I think Valve does a great job. Of course, there are other points that other players can mention, and I don't have time to really talk about every single point he's on this video, so I went with the topics that came to my mind easier. All right, hope you guys like it, and hope you see more improvements to the game.